All right, Northern Michigan, we are back for the post-game show here at Up North Live, and I'm Harrison Beeby, Up North Live sports director. Welcoming back in Mr. Matthew Soltysiak, former 7 and 4 sports reporter from ages ago. We won't tell the viewers how long ago that was, but your current sports reporting is done on the Not the Same Old Lions podcast. You know, a lot of traction in the last few years with that podcast. You have great guests, you have great co-hosts, and James Cook and Jerry Angers, and occasionally me when I
Yep.
try and beg and plead for you to let me on there enough. So you know a lot about football, Matt. You love the game of football and you love the NFL. And obviously tonight was what the NFL was hoping would be a great crescendo to their season. Now it's kind of like the saddest part of a lot of football fans' calendar because we don't got another game until end of August, and that's if you're a college and high school junkie. You know, wait. As far as regular season, we got to wait until September to appreciate the NFL again. We'll touch more on the Lions in a second, but Matt, Super Bowl 60 in the books. It was just on our TV 7 and 4 NBC station. 29-13, the Seattle Seahawks defeat the New England Patriots to win their second Super Bowl title in history. I believe their last one was 2014 against the Denver Broncos when Russell Wilson tore up the Denver Broncos, right? They beat Peyton Manning's team. So that was pretty impressive. All offensive onslaught. I think even though they scored 29, this is definitely a defensive game for Seattle to get the win tonight. But the big question as we watch the post-game show, Matt, who do you think is going to win the MVP?
You know, if they didn't call the holding penalty on the Kenneth Walker run, that would have been a touchdown. That would have put him around 170 yards rushing for the game. You might have been able to justify that. But it is a defensive game. The tough part is there were a lot of contributions on defense. I mean, Byron Murphy was pretty impressive with a couple of sacks, couple tackles for loss. You know, you had a couple turnovers. You know, it could go across the defensive board. I mean, Byron Murphy steps out to me, but I don't know who it's going to go with. I mean, you know, Julian Love, Nwosu could be the guy because he got the sack fumble
that led
touchdown.
To the chaos. Yep. But yeah, I think when you look at the stats, there wasn't any one defensive player that's dominated that has won MVP in the past. You could make the argument Jason Myers maybe making his 5 field goals should be in the consideration. I guess my only criticism of that is none of his longest one was 41 yards. It's not exactly a brutal kick for a pro football kicker.
As soon as Seattle scored a touchdown, I told everybody Myers has no shot at the MVP anymore because the touchdown's been scored.
If it was just him, you might be like, hey, man, your foot carried us.
Yeah.
But, you know, this was a Super Bowl that I think was refreshing for a lot of people to not have the Chiefs in it anymore, to not have the Eagles in it anymore. I know a lot of people in our region wish the Lions were involved in it, but Seattle and New England, 2 fresh faces, being New England 7 years since their last Super Bowl in the Brady Belichick era. First half was a little underwhelming, as we touched on in our halftime discussion, just the 3 field goals. But the second half did give us a little more excitement. It wasn't exactly an all-timer finish that we've seen in other Super Bowls in the past, but we definitely got more of an entertaining NFL product here in the second half, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, I mean, there was that one moment when it was 19-7, right? New England gets on the board and in the fourth quarter there, and you're like, hey, this could happen, and they get the ball back, but then you got the interception, right? The interception by Drake May, and you're like, okay, game's over. Well, for a moment, we had a chance that maybe because New England had started taking a shot or two, that maybe they connect on a couple more. And if instead of being an interception, if that is a connection and the guy goes for a touchdown, then you got a 19-14 game with plenty of time left. But that's not what happened. Yeah. Seattle did what we thought they were going to do in this game. And, you know, I'm not surprised by the outcome.
Yeah, I was just chatting with Joe Charlevoix, our chief meteorologist. You know, this is not going to be remembered as an all-timer game, but I do feel this Seattle performance will be up there for one of the all-time more dominant performance. And you could make the argument maybe New England was a little too inexperienced and younger to be in this stage, but I think I did see the stat that they were one of the highest scoring offenses this season. So to basically limit them until late in the game is definitely something to be proud of and probably be talked about for years and maybe decades to come.
Yeah. A couple of things crossed my mind on that, Harrison. I guess if we start with the offense, Drake May was number 2 in MVP voting. Now, a lot of people are going to point to...
I actually thought that might have been a chip on his shoulder, too, the fact that he didn't win it. But
yeah, and a lot of people will point to the schedule that the New England Patriots played this year. I would say I think the AFC in general was somewhat down. I do think the Denver Broncos were probably the best team in the AFC. until they lost their starting quarterback, and that changed things up. So I felt like the NFC had the edge. But I'll be honest, at halftime, I was kind of rooting for a shutout because I did some checking. There's never been a shutout in the Super Bowl. And so I was like, that'd be kind of cool to see. So I was kind of rooting for that. Didn't happen.
Yeah, it kind of had the vibes there of the Rams. I think they showed the stat Rams Patriots was the last time it was this low scoring. And yeah, not a lot of people with the Jared Goff losing to the Patriots in their last Super Bowl win. Not a lot of people think fondly of that one. So it was nice to see things get a little more exciting in the end there. And Kenneth Walker, being a former Michigan State guy, he was huge in the last game. The Spartans beat the Wolverines in college football in 2021. He scored all 5 touchdowns in that game. He said didn't get a touchdown in this one, but did log. I got the stats right here. We've got Ken for 135 on 27 carries. So a solid performance. If he ends up getting the MVP, great look for them. Spartan fans are happy to see that. And Seattle fans in particular are very happy to see that because even though they didn't get a lot of touchdowns, it kind of just led to field goals. He was a very big catalyst for getting this team to the top of the mountain.
And he had 2 catches for 26 yards. And it's a game where Jackson Smith-Njigba was not a big difference maker. He did get injured during part of the game. Sam Darnold was exactly 50% in completing his passes. So he didn't do anything extraordinary, but the extraordinary thing he did do, he avoided the turnover, right? Yep. I mean, Drake May had 2 interceptions in the game, plus I think he had a fumble. So that's 3 turnovers right there. That's a big difference. Sam Darnold did not become this turnover machine. Everybody kept saying, which Sam Darnold are we going to see? And I almost feel like people have been clinging on that narrative a little too long. He wasn't amazing, but he didn't lose it for him. They ran it with Kenneth Walker. Darnold did throw a touchdown pass, and then they just let the Seattle defense do what they needed to do, and they took care of the game.
I'd say he was a lot better than either of the Baltimore Ravens quarterbacks that came out on top in their respective Super Bowl. We got Joe Flacco and Trent Dilfer. I think we're known for giving attaboys to their defense for carrying them to the Super Bowl.
Joe Flacco had the most incredible 3-game run in a career, that playoffs, because that's when they came back and beat the Broncos when the Broncos thought they had won it. And so Flacco put 3 incredible games together there.
I think I'm mixing up here. Tebow led the Broncos, I think, the year before that. But
okay, yep, and you are right on the Dilfer thing.
Yeah, Dilfer. I remember him being on ESPN and be like, "I guy's a Super Bowl champion," but yeah. All due respect to the Ravens. Those were 2 dominant performances then, and Seattle flexing that defense wins championships. You know, Matt, it's a sad statistic, but it is the reality. The Detroit Lions are the only team in the 60 edition history of the Super Bowl to have never played in the big game. I want to know, you're Lions through and through. You research the team. You watch all the games. You follow all the offseason news and notes. What is it going to take to get the guys to the center stage of Super Bowl 61?
Well, wait, aren't the Cleveland Browns in the same category there?
But do they count as moving because they were technically?
Because they were involved. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I think that's I saw it earlier. The Lions are the only team to be where they were when the Super Bowl started. That's still in Minnesota.
Gotcha. Okay.
Bottom line, we know the Lions have never been there. We know they really want to be there. We know they have the strong potential to make moves to get there. They were so close a few years ago. You were at that game, which was at that same host site in San Francisco. So you were so close to seeing that team do it. What is it going to take to get the Lions to Super Bowl 61?
Well, this is the answer's got to be layered, if we're being honest here. There's multiple moving parts. First, as I said, during the halftime show, we're going to have to work on the offensive line. And if you want to get into a little bit specifics here, Dan Skipper retired. So you need a new OT3. Your OT2, Taylor Decker, is mulling retirement. You need to bring in an OT2. Whether Decker comes back or not, you need to bring in another offensive tackle, because if he comes back, it's probably for one last year. And we know how much he played through this past season. You need to figure out the center position. All right. And if you bring in another tackle, are you moving Penei Sewell to the left tackle? And then are you keeping Tate Ratledge at right guard? And so you could have 4 guys playing new positions on the offensive line next year. I mean, we don't know what's going to happen, but you got to start with that. Then you got to look and see what the tight end room is going to look like, because they're an extension of the offensive line. You've got your top 2 tight ends coming back off injury. And so, Sam Laporta and Brock Wright are amazing pieces. How healthy are they going to be? I think you need to inject somebody else into that room as well. That could be a quality tight end too. So that starts there. If you get to the defensive side, there's more question marks than we had a year ago. The secondary was our strength coming into last season. Kirby Joseph has something going on with his knee, and nobody really knows what it is. Brian Branch tore his Achilles. That was one of the best starting safety duos in the NFL. A strength is now a big question mark. Will Kirby be ready for the season? How's he going to look? When in the season will Brian Branch be back? And how will he look when he gets back? You need Terry and Arnold to get healthy and hopefully Enos Rakestraw. Are you going to bring back Amik Robertson in the nickel? And so that the secondary can get shored up. Linebacking crew, they're going to bring back some guys, and they have some great talent there, but they're going to have to bring back some guys and make a big decision on Alex Anzalone. And then we have to hit on that hot button topic, Harrison. Everyone's been clamoring. Are you going to get a big, fast sack finding defensive end on the opposite side of Aiden Hutchinson? Seems like that's been the question for a couple of years.
I think Aiden would appreciate it.
What's that?
I think Aiden would appreciate it.
I'm sure he would. And then you got to see what the middle looks like, because Roy Lopez is a free agent. Hopefully you can bring him back. We had the big news with Pascal and Onwuzurike still technically under contract. We thought they were gone. We'll see what that looks like. But there's a lot of moving parts. That said, they are a very talented team still. They have a lot of very talented players. I expect them to I'm not going to make any too stronger predictions because I got to wait and see what they do in free agency and the draft. But they definitely have the ability to be a playoff-bound team next year, depending on how the pieces come together.
Yeah, there's a lot that will go into that. So basically what you're saying is if every player is healthy and reports to work and does their job, they got a shot.
Well, yes, but because they need to bring some players in. And Campbell said it. They need to bring in more competition than they did this past season. And that's for a couple of reasons. Some of those guys are gone. And so you need to elevate a little bit. So I'm going to say they're going to need to make some strategic moves. That they need to shore up that offensive line. And it wouldn't shock me if they made a trade for an offensive lineman, the way they did for Carlton Davis a couple of years ago in the defensive back room, to know that they had a starter there before they even went into the draft.
Yeah. Well, and I think change is always, even if you're the best team in the world, change is always necessary in this ever-evolving NFL landscape. When Tom Brady won with the Buccaneers, remember there was all the buzz around them returning pretty much every player, and then what happened? They didn't repeat. I think the Chiefs won again that year. Whatever, the year after the Bucs won with Tom Brady, they were supposed to be the favorite, and I think they lost in the second round or something. So these things happen. You got to constantly be evolving and looking at what's going to make you younger, faster, more aggressive. And hopefully Dan and the boys are taking this extra long offseason to prioritize those categories. Matt, anything else you want to shout out about the Lions, about Super Bowl 60, or about your Not the Same Old Lions podcast before we wrap up?
No, just thanks for having me on. Again, it is that slower time of the season, but the NFL season never really stops, right? We're a couple weeks away from the NFL Combine. Then it's a week or so later than that. You've got free agency. And then before you know it, the NFL draft is coming up. We cover all that stuff. So if you're looking for Lions content off season, on season, go to notthesameoldlions.com. You can find all our episodes and shows there.
You do a great job with that. So congrats again on turning it into what it's become. And thank you again for joining us for these retrospectives here of Super Bowl 60 here on Up North Live. And for those of you watching live, you can click on the link on this stream and you can share your vote on what you thought about the game, the commercials, the halftime show. We got a whole litany of topics covered that you can vote on right now on our polls on upnorthlive.com and share your reactions to Super Bowl 60 now in the books as we look ahead to next season and Super Bowl 61, which will be on our other network, ABC 29 and 8, this time next February. So we'll go from the baton will hand off from NBC to ABC, but both of those are still under our Up North Live umbrella here. So Matthew Soltysiak, thank you again. Have a good evening. Have a good week, more importantly. Get some sleep tonight. I know you got work probably in the morning. And for those of you watching, we will be live on ABC in just a few minutes at 11 o'clock. And then if you're watching the Olympic coverage and the postgame for NFL, we will be live on NBC right around midnight or so, depending when all that stuff wraps up. So a couple of news options for you tonight if you like. But Matt, thanks again. Take care, brother. We'll see you soon.
All right. Sounds great. Thanks, Harrison.